This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. New Jersey's community colleges, aligning education to build an innovative workforce. Find out how your business can benefit at njpathways.org. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 66 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, Governor Murphy rocked New Jersey's business community this year by proposing a 2.5% corporate transit fee on the state's largest employers as part of the FY25 budget, and it returns the state to the largest corporate tax rate in the nation by a long shot. So today we get the thoughts on the potential impact of this major tax hike on business from NJBIA President and CEO Michele Siekerka, State Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Tom Bracken, and Chamber of Commerce of South Jersey President and CEO, Christina Renna. Christina, Tom, Michele, thank you so much for being here today. We're all here to talk about the corporate transit fee that Governor Murphy has proposed as part of his FY25 budget. Before we get to the impacts of that, I wanted to get each of your takes on what this kind of reversal from the corporate business surtax to this corporate transit fee, what does it mean for New Jersey's business climate? Michele, I'll start with you.
Well, let's start with business needs predictability and certainty so that they can plan for the future. When companies make investments, they have to understand what the business environment is going to be, not just for today or tomorrow, but for 1, 3, 5 years. That's how they make big investment. And when you don't have that predictability and that certainty, it causes businesses to freeze their hand on the wallet and be very concerned about making investments. So the number one concern is, are we going to see investment and reinvestment given the fact that we now have a reversal in policy? That's very concerning.
What do you think, Tom?
Predictability piece I agree with, but let's make sure we realize this is a proposal. Yeah. It's not done yet.
Right.
And I think I would reserve any kind of comment until this is over and done. And quite frankly, if the legislature decides not to do it, it turns a big negative into a huge positive.
Right. Yep. Christina, what do you think?
You know, I agree with both Michele and Tom's comments. At the end of the day, this is a proposal. We're working through the budget process as we speak. Right. We hope the legislature steps up to the plate and looks at this and says, this is a bad policy that once again makes New Jersey an outlier. Yeah. You know, that's something we are constantly fighting against. It's not just affordability issues and looking at, individual taxes, but this is just an overall situation where we, once again, looking at our neighboring states, stand apart in a way that we don't want to, and that's being unfriendly to the business community.
Right. As I said in the intro, this is about funding New Jersey Transit. In South Jersey, Christina, where you're kind of mainly housed, there aren't a whole lot of options for New Jersey Transit down there. So do you think it's fair that, those South Jersey businesses should be putting into this if it does become final?
It's really an interesting situation we're in South Jersey. New Jersey Transit doesn't serve much of South Jersey, very limited. It is there, but not nearly to the level that our residents in the southern portion of the state need and desperately want. And so when we look at this tax on our largest employers in South Jersey, not only are they now being asked to pay more taxes that just a few months ago they thought was going to go away, now they're being asked to step back up to the table and fund a public service that is a crucial public service, and no one's saying it's not, but these employers in South Jersey's employees are not utilizing New Jersey Transit services. Our residents are barely using New Jersey Transit services. And again, not because we don't want to, but because we have no access to it. So at the end of the day, it becomes taxation without access. And is that fair? In a lot of ways, I call it a double whammy on the South Jersey businesses that are being hit by the corporate transit fee and an increased tax, but also being asked to pay for something that we don't have.
Right. And Michele, You've also heard from other businesses, correct? Like even not in South Jersey, who don't really, their employees don't use it.
Well, two examples. One is we have some of the office parks where transit doesn't go. And then so that would be the same as South Jersey, right? And then the other issue is I actually spoke with some companies where one company in particular, 5% do take ridership on New Jersey Transit. However, that company reimburses as part of an employee benefit. So now they'll be paying twice.
Right. Tom, if this becomes law of the land, the 2.5% surtax, what do you think the short-term impacts will be on a company?
Well, first of all, any company who is going to be impacted is going to find every way possible to reduce the tax, which means that they're going to be readjusting their P&Ls, their balance sheets to make some changes to keep the tax at a minimum. But there could be other things they do: raise prices, move out of the state, which is the ultimate option, which I don't think will happen, but could happen. They could redirect investments in the state to other states. There's a lot of short-term things that they're going to do, none of which will be positive. I mean, this is not going to prompt them to do anything to help the New Jersey economy grow, period. So they have a lot of options. They'll be using all those options, which is probably going to result in the anticipated amount of money that people think is going to be the stable funding source, less than they first thought, and also not stable.
Right. Have you heard anything, Christina, from any of your larger member businesses?
Oh, absolutely.
What are
I
they
mean,
telling you?
this is the hottest topic there is amongst our large employers in South Jersey. You know, at the end of the day, a tax isn't a tax just on business. Right. You know, sometimes elected officials like to paint it as, you know, the corporate players, they can afford it. Right. Okay, but that always gets trickled down. That always gets passed through. Is it higher prices on the consumer? In an era where inflation is very real, and you can't go to a supermarket and get the same amount of food you could for $50 than you could 5 years ago. You know, these taxes are not just done in a vacuum. They are very much spread out, and everyone ends up feeling the impact. Corporations are low-hanging fruit oftentimes for elected officials to target, but it's unfairly characterized as something that they could just eat and it won't affect anyone else, and that would be an absolutely false portrayal.
You know, one thing, Bob, I've heard several times, which I totally agree with. Everybody rails against congestion pricing because New York State MTA wants New Jersey residents to pay for their subway system where there's absolutely zero linkage between the two. Same thing with this. There's zero linkage between the 600 companies being asked to pay and New Jersey Transit. So, you know, the people who want this to be done are also people who are against congestion pricing for that reason. I mean, it's the same situation.
And no other state in the nation uses this type of a tax to fund their mass transportation. It's a bad policy, and with that lack of nexus and the fact that no one else does it, we'll go back to that outlier status once again, which is not something that we want to be known for.
You know, Michele, I remember talking to you last year about, you know, this sunset of the 2.5% surtax for corporate business tax, and we talked about how other states they've found it economically stimulative. What is New Jersey getting away from by not doing this? How could this have helped?
Sure. Well, I want to go back to the idea that, you know, corporations can afford this. The issue is it affects competitiveness. And, you know, let's just start with our neighbor to the west, Pennsylvania, that is right now on a multi-year trajectory to drive their CBT down to below 5% by 2031. Right. That's an immediate threat because being right here on the Delaware River, we see each and every day, you know, companies contemplating going across, and those calls are made. Now let's look, you know, down south. And usually when we compare, we like to compare in the region because this is a high cost region. But we can't ignore the fact that places like North Carolina, Texas, and Tennessee most recently, okay, are seeing that when they're attracting companies, they're taking the investment, the bigger economic stimulus of the job creation and investing that back in their economy. Therefore, they're increasing the quality of life in those places. Sure. And so the argument isn't like it might have been 10 years ago, you get what you pay for, and it's all in New Jersey, because these other states have really ramped up their education systems, their quality of life, their downtown, their diversity. They're becoming more attractive places for people to want to live as well. And that should be concerning.
And Bob, one state that is never mentioned is the state of Delaware, or rarely mentioned, I should say. We focus so much in New Jersey on New York and Pennsylvania, rightly so. But down in the southern part of the state, it's a hop, skip, and a jump over to Delaware.
I have in-laws that work there.
It's a beautiful and easy ride to get there, where they do have a higher CBT, right? They do have about 8.7% CBT on the higher end. But you're looking at a state with no sales tax, low income taxes, and the fourth lowest property taxes in the nation. So again, it's not just one tax here, one tax here. It's looking at the entire affordability of a state, and being positioned in South Jersey like our businesses are. I have many members that look at Delaware and say, this is extraordinarily attractive for many, many reasons. And it's right there. So, and given what Pennsylvania is doing, as Michele noted, Governor Shapiro is doing some really interesting, smart, dynamic things with the CBT rate in a way that is gradual, and is a way that New Jersey businesses are going to look at this and look right over, in my case, in the Camden Naval Yard or the Philly Naval Yard and be, I'm a Camden business, but right there, not even 5 minutes away, I could go and have 4.99 CBT rate. It's very real.
Yeah. Throw a softball over there.
So the one thing, Bob, I would mention too is that the probably the biggest problem with this, forget about the 2.5% and the turning of the lack of keeping your word and that kind of stuff. We were on a roll. State had momentum. Yeah. We were going in the right direction. Things were looking pretty good. We just held a business summit where of a lot of optimism for things that are going on. So this is something that is a momentum stopper. Yeah. And that's really unfortunate because not only is it a momentum stopper, we have the World Cup coming up. We have 3.5 billion people that are going to look at New Jersey. We have to put our best foot forward. It's a wrong time to stop our momentum. If we kept our momentum going into that World Cup, we'd have a huge opportunity to get companies to be enthusiastic about being here and staying here and growing here, and maybe to attract companies to come here, both nationally and internationally. So the fact that we have put a roadblock in front of our momentum, and we should be doing the exact opposite and building up our momentum for the World Cup, is probably one of the more disconcerting things for me in this whole situation.
So I think staying on the concept of location and relocation, because we have had some discussion with some relocation experts, and in the companies, they talk about the fact that, well, when the next location discussion comes up, I'm not making that decision. We have a whole team that does that, and they kind of work in their own little vacuum of what they consider with their algorithms and otherwise. And this is the concern. We talked about post-COVID, the quiet quitting of the workforce, and someone suggested to me the other day that we should be concerned about the quiet quitting of our New Jersey corporations, and that if they have multiple assets outside the state of New Jersey, the growth is going to happen outside the state of New Jersey. When there's the opportunity to create the next 1,000 jobs or build the next facility, one company talked specifically about Delaware and said, I was looking at South Jersey, but now I might have to look at Delaware because from a logistics perspective, you're covering the same territory. It's Connecticut to Delaware is what they look at in their algorithm, and then they're going to look for a lower tax state.
Sure, and Delaware has the same amount of land and space that borders Salem County as we do in New Jersey. So it really ends up being a no-brainer. I know off the top of my head 4 companies just right now that over the past decade have slowly moved operations out of that Salem County area into Delaware or even further south, South Carolina, Georgia, et cetera.
And that's the drip. That's what we have to pay attention to. It's people can talk about, well, they didn't pick up all their toys and go home, right? It's the not growing into the future. Staying stagnant is no better than not growing.
And from our perspective in South Jersey, Salem County, Cumberland County, those counties near Delaware are 2 of the poorest counties in the state of New Jersey. We desperately need businesses to be there because we need jobs. We just need that job creation there. And because we are so dependent on our vehicles, ideally, Going to Delaware is not, great. And so what can this state be doing to look uniquely, especially at South Jersey, and say we need to attract businesses here, we need to keep businesses here, we need to make sure that we are growing jobs in that workforce to make sure our poorest residents and our more urban areas in this part of the state are covered.
But let's not crush New Jersey on this one issue. This is a huge issue. I agree. It's a major issue we have to overcome. But there's no other state in this country that has the demographics, the assets, and the location that we do.
Yeah.
It's unmatched by any state. So we just have to deal with what we have as a problem, make sure we get rid of that problem or find a way to overcome that problem, and rely on all the other things to build our future economy. Nobody can replicate our location. Nobody can replicate our demographics or some of the assets we have. So let's just focus on the fact that we have an isolated problem. It's a big problem. It's a huge problem. Yeah. But let's not let that just crush everything we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, well, you're looking at three of the biggest cheerleaders for New Jersey business. When I go out and speak, I always talk about I have the biggest blue and gold pom-poms you can have. Absolutely. And I always talk about, right, those great assets, our workforce, our location, our infrastructure, right? You can't beat those things for sure. We have to mine those assets, and we have to do the best we can to enhance those assets. We have to be practical in between. I think this is why we're calling on our legislature right now to say, please reject the governor's proposal at this point. And as we say at BIA, hashtag do better for business, because we have so much opportunity, right? Carpe diem, seize the day. Yeah. We have a lot we can seize here in New Jersey.
And at our business summit, Joaquin Duato, the CEO of J&J,
very good,
addressed this issue very succinctly and said, I don't like it. I'm not for it. I've told the governor that. However, we're not going to change what we're doing at J&J because of this. There's too many other good things for us to stay and grow in New Jersey, and we will continue to do that. That's the capsulization we wanted, which kind of puts us into an isolated situation. We need to overcome this. We need to do something about it. But let's dwell on the fact that we have so many other good things that nobody else has.
At the end of the day, every piece of this puzzle matters. The good, the bad, the ugly. Right. And a business owner, a developer is going to take all of the good, the bad, and the ugly into a portfolio of an equation, whether deciding to come here, grow here, expand here. And we just want to make sure the three of us every day are just sitting here being that cheerleader and saying, pick us, pick us. But when we have policies coming out of Trenton that sometimes seem counter to that, it's extraordinarily hard to beat against.
And that will always happen. If it's not what we're dealing with today, it'll be something tomorrow. It's just New Jersey.
Keeps you guys busy. All right, thanks to Christina, Renna, Tom Bracken, and Michele Siekerka for their thoughts on the proposed corporate transit fee. We'll be back right after this.
Calm before the storm? No, thank you. This is Jim's time to shine. And Mike's. And Jennifer's. Helmets? Check. Drones? Check. Checking that thing we just checked? Double check. We ain't got time to chill. We're out here driving this thing. This is when we get to work. To keep you connected. No matter what. Connect before the storm. Change how we weather them. Connecting changes everything. AT&T.
Welcome back to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Continuing on the theme of extreme taxation for New Jersey businesses, we now take you to a recent press conference held by NJBIA on a proposed corporate transit fee that will hit not only businesses, but New Jersey consumers and residents throughout the state.
Now, it's called the corporate transit fee, but it is very similar in nature, in fact, identical to what was the corporate business tax that just sunset on December 31st of 2023, on a 4 years long commitment that it would sunset at that time. The 2.5% was on top of what is New Jersey's 9% corporate business tax. And 9% New Jersey is the fourth most expensive state when it comes to corporate business tax in the nation. But at least when we talk about ninth most expensive, we're still in a competitive ranking, right? When we're at 11.5%, we're an extreme outlier. And I want to emphasize extreme outlier in that it's the only double digit and double digit by far. When we talk about cost to New Jersey's largest job creators, I want to make a very important distinction, because what we hear consistently is, Well, they can afford it, so why not ask them to pay more? They should pay their fair share. Let's talk about afford first. Number one, this isn't an issue of affordability. This is an issue of competitiveness. And when you're an extreme outlier, businesses have the opportunity to make decisions. And when they make decisions on investment and reinvestment, they need predictability and certainty before they can make those investments. And when you have policies, particularly tax policies, that flip-flop, it's very difficult for a company to make an immediate short-term or long-term investment here in the state of New Jersey. That is a significant concern, and that is a reigning message that I've heard over the last 6 weeks that I've been talking to our CEOs and our C-suite executives on their concerns about this policy. It creates a culture here in New Jersey where we have to be concerned about our ability to bank on the word of our policymakers. And when that happens, unfortunately, it causes those investments to be frozen in their place. So we need to ensure that a business can look 1 year, 3 year, 5 years ahead when they are making long-term investments here in the state of New Jersey. And when, unfortunately, we had a very pronounced statement from Governor Murphy that he understood that CBT affects competitiveness, and it puts New Jersey at a situation of not being competitive, and then reverses that by putting in this corporate transit fee, that reverse in policy is a concern that causes our businesses, again, to freeze their hand on that wallet of investment.
I think the impact of this goes across the board, not just to those that are getting the fee. I think there's a strong message that New Jersey's sending to businesses with this. I think that for those larger companies, they haven't had the ability to plan for this properly, and their planning and budgeting and everything that they're doing for their companies, we're 2 quarters into this already. So the clawback effect of this tax and this fee is going to be very impactful on those companies. That's going to trickle down. So these are the large companies in New Jersey that if you have companies that are New Jersey centric and want to support New Jersey, their pensions might be invested in these companies. Their individuals might be invested in these companies. Their shareholders of those companies are therefore going to be impacted. And that can go all the way down to retirement plans for closely held businesses throughout the state and outside of the state. I think that this entire tax has a lot to do with pushing people out of New Jersey, not just how to keep them in New Jersey. We used to be the recipient of people leaving New York, right? Look at the corporate tax difference there now. There's no reason for people to come in from outside. And as Michele said, all of these neighboring states become much more attractive to our New Jersey businesses across the board, not just these large ones that are actually getting the fee. So I think that that's a really big impact of this that we can't ignore. When we sit with different clients, and one of the issues has to do with allocating your income between the states. I think that becomes a real push for people to have the growth outside of New Jersey, even in states even in companies in New Jersey who might stay in New Jersey but are doing business throughout. It's just we're not positioning ourselves as a growth state. There's other states that we see, whether it's Tennessee, North Carolina, Texas, that are positioning themselves as growth states, having to do with their tax structure. And we're not doing that at all. So from a tax standpoint, I think these are all really important things to be thinking about.
I want to bring it down to a local level where the rubber hits the road. So when all of these things happen in Trenton, it's the local mayors with governing bodies, chambers of commerce that deal with the fallout. 20 years ago, many of you remember that Verizon was considering leaving New Jersey. It was between New Jersey and Virginia at the time. I worked closely with Dennis Bowen and then the administration of Governor McGreevey into the Corzine era to make sure we made New Jersey as attractive as possible, as well as Berners Township, to lure Verizon to stay here with their wireless operations. As you recall, AT&T was pulling out of their mammoth 1 million square foot building complex in our community. The ripple down effect that had when they closed those doors of AT&T was significant, not only on my community, but in the greater area and across all different segments of our community. What we immediately saw when AT&T pulled out and the building lights went off was 30 to 40% of the hotel, hospitality, and restaurant industry bottomed out. Some even closed because their doors just couldn't handle the loss of revenues. Transportation businesses, business support companies, retail, all down 40 to 50% almost immediately. With the loss of those great paying jobs, also went some minor bumps in the road for our realty market, because people want to move closer to where they're working, so they're going to pay more to live where they're working, to minimize their transit or whatever. We saw problems with our residential units being sold. The values were going down. People's nest eggs were being affected. Now, if this happens on a grand scale in New Jersey and people start to move, mayors, governing bodies, chambers of commerce, get ready to deal with these things, because they are a reality. You're going to see problems with what would I do as a mayor with 1 million square feet of obsolete corporate use right now? Nobody wanted that property 20 years ago. And I can only imagine in this post-COVID era where more people are working from home, corporations are scaling back and having people come in on flex days, that these buildings are becoming antiquated quickly. How do we adjust that? Do we just change our zoning and allow more residential housing to come in, affect our infrastructure, crowd our schools? It's just a bad situation across the board. We need to work on legislation, and I need to preface this by asking our legislators to don't consider that penny wise, pound foolish. Consider that right now, because when this thing goes into effect, companies have to answer to stakeholders. They have to answer to profits. Many of our corporations here in New Jersey are fantastic corporate citizens. They give back to the communities they serve on top of the taxes they pay. Their employees get involved in doing countless charitable work. But there comes a point where, like Christina said, Delaware and Michele, Pennsylvania, and New York become highly more attractive than New Jersey. So I just want to tell you, we went through this 20 years ago. And as the markets begin to change, business continues to change. Verizon at the time, the property taxes that they paid to our community equated to almost 1/6 of our entire municipal budget. If we didn't find a tenant for that building, our local government would have been crushed. Taxes would have skyrocketed overnight, and with no way out. This is what the nightmare can happen to any of your communities, whether it's a rural or an urban setting business. It's real. It's happened before. It can happen again. So I'm just here to urge you to move cautiously, take a look at all the facts and figures, and treat the business community with a little more leeway so they stay, create those good paying jobs, continue to pay those income taxes, property taxes, and to continue to provide the goods and services and improve the quality of life on a residential level.
I can tell you that yes, we've been very fortunate to attract some new businesses, here in New Jersey. Some of them aren't yet here just yet, right? So you mentioned Netflix, and we're thrilled to have Netflix come. The whole deal's not inked yet, all right? And there was a understanding of what the business climate was, to the point that was just made a moment ago, that I think is the real nexus and piece of all of this, is when a company believes that the business environment is going to be one thing as they're, getting ready to make an investment, and that changes, they have to stop and think about how that impacts them. If they're going to be amenable to that, to that or not. We have seen companies over the past few years, and again, I'm going to say, oftentimes, a long time standing New Jersey company may not pick up all their toys and leave, though Honeywell did, Mercedes-Benz did. We've got a lot of examples of, companies that have done that, right? However, they're not growing here per se. And when you have financial institutions who are here in New Jersey and choose to place 1,000 jobs in Delaware versus in New Jersey, right? We should be conscious of that. That's 1,000 jobs that's not here in New Jersey.
There are going to be ramifications, and that's because, coming back to, the fact that businesses need predictability, these businesses impacted were told time and time again that as of January 1st, 2.5% tax increase was going away. And they created their budgets based on that 2.5% corporate business surcharge at the time going away. Now, should this proposal go through, that comes back. That is something unplanned, unbudgeted for. And so all of the avenues that Michele discussed there's any number of ways a business can make up for it. But at the end of the day, they have a budget. They have to stick to that budget to make their goals for the end of the year. And this 2.5% impact or tax increase was something that was not planned for and could potentially be coming back. That means something's got to give somewhere.
All right, thank you to our panel from NJBIA's Corporate Transit Fee Press Conference. Thank you to our producer, Vinny Civitillo. And thank you for joining us on NJBIA's Mind Your Business. We'll see you next time.